Welcome back to the show. We're about to learn the secret sauce. Clem, how you doing?
Not too bad. Beautiful day in San Francisco.
It really is, man. It's we got it's super cold, foggy in the morning, but you get so much sun.
Yeah, that's what I say about San Francisco. It's sunny all year round, and it's very low variance, and that's what I want from my weather. 300 days of okay weather instead of the 50 days of great weather I get in Germany, where I'm from.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that we caught you during this current tour here in San Francisco. But why don't we talk about what you're here to talk about, which is LangFuse. What's LangFuse?
We refer to LangFuse as the open source LLM engineering platform. We help teams of developers iterate on and improve their LLM applications. That's the value claim. And then in terms of features, I think there's really 4 broad features that we help developers with. The first is tracing and observability, really tracing your LLM application in production, understanding the context of the execution, and drilling down into the statistics, the individual trace, figuring out what's going right, what's going wrong. Second piece is evaluation, getting at quality, automated evaluations, human evaluations, all that stuff. Third is versioning and prompt management. So versioning your entire application, versioning your prompts. And the fourth is testing. So I think that's kind of a concept from people know from normal machine learning, assembling data sets of expected inputs and outputs and testing your application when you redeploy it.
Yeah, sounds like all stuff that is very popular right now.
Definitely. And I think we sort of iterated towards that over time. We started out only doing observability and then basically worked with an increasing number of teams over time and figured out that these are the other things that people really need today. And sort of over the past year, LangFuse has really developed into maybe a developer tool suite in a small sense.
Yeah. And I only knew of LangFuse because of the PostHog integration. So can you talk about, I know analytics, I know what I use PostHog for. So can you explain more about what I would use an LLM for, or specifically analytics for LLM like LangFuse?
Yeah, definitely. So I think with LLMs, the basic problems that a lot of developers face today is getting to consistently high quality output. I mean, I think everyone's played around with ChatGPT at least, and then many people have also tried building applications. And it's pretty easy to come up with something that's really impressive and that works kind of, but then getting that to a point where it really repeatably works in 99% of the cases and really delivers value to your users is much more difficult. And we found that people need a new kind of tool to get to that. And traditional analytics tools are really great at understanding kind of what your users do and look at replays, etc. But with LLMs, there's so much, in the end, stochastic processes, probabilistic processes happening that you really want to look under the hood and drill into that. And that's where we started out with observability tracing, which really allows you to understand your entire application's context. That's not only the LLM calls, but specifically the LLM calls was where we started. And then it also allows you to loop in everything else that's happening in your applications, API calls, retrieval for RAG applications, that sort of thing. And it really allows you to look, hey, what are the steps in the entire application's execution? Where are things going right? Where are things going wrong?
Yeah, so I have an LM app and it gives me recipes and based on
pizza.
For pizza, let's say that. And I want to make the best pizza dough ever. But when I get a response, it says you got to add rocks to it. So how would that show up in your product?
So, I mean, firstly, we do very traditional observability stuff. So you could just have the history of that application and look at everything. And if you are a low traffic application, that's probably all you need. You might just want to look at all the history of your application's executions. And then if you have more traffic, then you might want to use the other features that we have. For example, testing or evaluations. So evaluations would be either you assign to your intern, go through this queue of executions and tell me which are good or which are bad. Or you can ask an LLM, which is an automated evaluation. Hey, do you, you could write an evaluation and say, do you think that any of the items in this recipe are off if I want to create pizza? And then we will run this LLM on top of your application, the outputs of your application, and basically flag the executions for you that we think might be wrong. So you basically have an idea, hey, I have these thousands and thousands of applications. Where do I need to drill down into where do I need to look if I have all this data.
Okay. Yeah. So we jumped right into the product, but I wanted to zoom back out of like more of origin of Clem, but also of LangFuse. So y'all are in YC, which I think was 2023 winter batch.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. 1.5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was like an infamous batch. Now we talked about this before we caught up earlier. But this was like a batch where like post ChatGPT, like everyone felt like they had to pivot into an AI solution or a pickaxe and shovel. And you were one of these companies. So like, what was the thing you actually interviewed for to go to YC?
Yeah, so we interviewed for a solution in the quote to cash space, in the billing space, basically a competitor to Stripe billing for sort of large sales-led SaaS deals. That's what we interviewed with, got into YC with, and then figured out, or with our partners and also by ourselves, we weren't moving forward as fast as we wanted to. And it wasn't really working out. A bunch of reasons for that. And then we started pivoting relatively early on in the batch, so like a month in maybe. And that was the time when when GPT-4 came out and excitement was really high. We started working with GPT-4 on the application layer and like testing out, hey, what kinds of stuff can we build with LLMs that's super useful? We worked on a pull request bot, like sort of, I guess, like very early innings of like Devon coding bot. We worked on a web scraper, like a lot of the things that great teams have now taken so much further. Like we were just kind of toying around for a week. And then seeing all the problems that we had and also our batchmates had. So many people in the YC batch that were working on similar problems. And that's when we decided, hey, maybe we should kind of start solving our own problem and build tooling for us and the other people that were building on the application layer.
Yeah, and it seems like a very fast iteration. Like YC is like 12 weeks, right?
Yeah, something like that, basically, yeah.
Yeah, so you're taking a full week, or maybe it's not even a full week, but you're taking time to go build all these different ideas and solutions to figure out what you're pivoting to. Which at what point did you, like, what was the traction that you figured the Stripe billing competitor is like, okay, this is not it? Was it like you had like a few?
So we were working on that for a good 3, 4, 5 months. And we had maybe about 10 customers. And that was good. I mean, that's also kind of how we got into YC, was having traction and sort of showing that people were using this. But I think when you work with these customers every day and you talk to them and you understand that they could live without what you're building, and they would probably like not be super sad if you told them we're shutting this down, which actually ended up happening and they weren't super sad, was what led us to move away from that in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's an age-old question for at least startup founders or folks who read startup school books and blog posts from Paul Graham. But it sounds obvious, but when you're invested in building the thing, you just never think, oh no, we can figure it out. Like we're gonna get over the hurdle. So you got to that point, and I imagine the partners are like, hey, this isn't it. And so you got to this thing, building this pickaxe, or the shovel, whatever you would call it, this tools for LLM apps. So you finished the batch and you have a fully running product?
Yeah, so we were iterating during the batch and then we landed, like we were exploring a bunch of ideas in tooling then for a couple of weeks, testing and like some other things. And we basically landed on the original LangFuse idea, which was observability and analytics. And that was really what we were doing for the first at least half year. We landed on that basically when we were about to leave San Francisco again. So maybe as an aside, we're my 2 co-founders, who I haven't mentioned yet, Max and Mark, and myself, we're all Germans and we're based out of Berlin, Germany right now. And so basically when we returned to Berlin, we started working on LangFuse, the observability and analytics platform.
Oh, so at demo day, did you present?
We didn't. We deferred demo day, which is, I think, I
didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. It's a well-kept secret. It's possible. It's not encouraged, and I wouldn't encourage like any other YC companies watching to do that, because it feels a little bit shitty when everyone's like.
It's like the Uno reverse card.
Yeah, exactly. It's you're sitting out, which wasn't great, but we just weren't there yet, and in the end, it was great. So we presented at demo day with the next batch, summer 23. A couple months later, when we also had a working product that was out there with like hundreds of users, and that was exciting.
Yeah. So, and you made the decision or you and your co-founders made the decision to open source this as well. So like, why open source when like OpenAI is not open sourced?
Yeah, so we were clear from the beginning that we're building a dev tool here, and developers really love dev tools, right? Sorry, that's tautological. Developers really love open source.
Yeah.
And through YC, we were exposed to the founders of Superbase and Postdoc specifically, who I think we took a lot of pages out of their books over time, and were really inspired by the way they sell, market, and build their product. So we had sort of very warm, fuzzy feelings about starting out as open source from the get-go. Then I think being a dev tool makes it even easier to choose open source, and that's I think was a very natural decision for us, and we didn't actually like spend so much time agonizing about it, but just started building an open source from day zero.
Yeah, and I think some of the like with open source, a lot of what we did was open source because I was working at GitHub, and it's like sure, I could either work on this in a private repo or I can like put this out in the open and then people give me feedback, and not a ton of feedback up the front, like out the gate basically. But like with LangFuse, how soon did you see some adoption from being open source?
So being open source definitely helped from the get-go, because I think you just increase the attack surface or the surface that you have that people can find you under or on. And so we started out working with a couple of people from the YC batch. So I guess we could have found these even as closed source. But then over the summer, we found our first like really sort of random users, people that we didn't know, that we had no connection with, that joined our Discord, that found us on GitHub. And there's a couple of them, very famous user to us is Goku-san on Discord, who's a great guy who just like spent hours and hours and hours over weeks and weeks and weeks really going deep on the product with us and helping us improve it and really get it to production grade.
Yeah. So as a volunteer open source contributor?
Yeah, basically he didn't contribute very much, but he was just such a heavy user and like really excited about the project that, you know, you need these people that actually take your product out into the wild, like beta test it. And yeah, there's a couple of people that were incredibly helpful that probably wouldn't have found us if we weren't open source. And he actually integrated it into his own open source library. So he wasn't contributing to our project, but he was, you know, taking it into his project, which I guess, you know, made him very familiar with how our project works on like an intimate level. And these are the people that you want to give you feedback, right? People that have really looked into your code base, into your schemas, and
Yeah, so it sounds like with open source though, like there is the idea of like your first 1,000 true fans from like the Lenny podcast. I don't even know what the guy's name is, but he's got a podcast and talks about this all the time. And you could kind of really shake the tree, or even like have this sort of like plane of awareness, I guess, attack surface, I guess is what you call it. But I get you were saying, but like basically this awareness funnel within open source where you could find this true fan who's Goku-san, which is a great name. Yeah. So, but the one thing so I reached out to you because I heard you talking at the Superbase meetup, and you had shared that you got your first 100 stars. You had reached out to every single one of those folks. And I wanted you to share that story in this podcast because I think it's something that not a lot of folks think of. Like, yes, you get stars, but like, what do you do with them?
Yeah, so I think that was something where open source is in general, like a message I would want to share is that open source helps in building a company because your customers and the people that are excited about your project are like very likely to also be pretty online and reachable to you. Like you can like easily find out about them. So what we did for the first 100 and actually first 1,000 stars and signups was we basically piped these through a webhook into Slack. Every star, every signup, and then I would go ahead and research every one of them. Like find out on their GitHub profiles, do they have a LinkedIn? Do they have a Twitter account? Do they have a website? Find out where do they work? What are they doing? And then reach out to them through any one of those channels and basically ask them, hey, why did you start LangFuse? Did you try it out? Do you have anything what specifically were you looking for, et cetera, et cetera? And that was incredibly helpful. I mean, it's one of those like YC things, do things that don't scale. Like it doesn't scale at some point, but it's super helpful to find the people that are liking you, that are signing up to you, and then people sign up with their Gmails, right? And but then you have their name, so you can Google them and just find out, like very likely, like what do they actually do? Do they work at a company? Do they have their own startup? And then you know more specifically, hey, who do I want to talk to, and whose feedback do I want to get?
Yeah, and this is like part of like the lean startup, or like the methodology of like, because I worked at some SaaS companies early 2010s, and we'd go through and be like, oh, someone at Facebook.com signed up, and because back in the day you didn't have this OAuth 2 where everyone uses a social platform to sign in, usually like just an email. And every random like 10th or 100th a person signing up. It's like, oh, they used their work email. Okay, we should probably talk to them. And that world's not over, but like now people are signing up through Gmail or their personal Gmail. So like going and Googling and discovering them, like there's a bit of like a searching that needs to happen.
Definitely. And it's, I think, yeah, that's the kind of work you can do when you're early and when you're figuring out things, right? And you're 3 co-founders and you have 1 co-founder that's kind of focusing on customer discovery and like marketing, sales stuff. Yeah, that was super, super helpful.
Yeah, it's almost like if someone built a star search platform to discover where people work at companies and what open source they do.
Yeah.
It's almost like we should have a commercial break at this point in the podcast. But yeah, thank you for that one. Cool. So like, what are you all working on now? Like, so you're in San Francisco now. Y'all, I think, publicly raised funding. I'm not sure. Not even
yes,
sure.
we did. So we raised a funding round in a seed round and announced that in the fall of last year.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know, should I talk about the seed round or is that interesting to
Phil,
people?
It's a lot of folks are here for this discussion and like understanding like your journey. So like, share the seed round if it's public. I didn't know if there's a blog post of public or not.
No, it's public. So we raised a seed round in total a little over $4 million from Lightspeed, a German fund called La Familia, which was in the meantime taken over by General Catalyst, and Y Combinator and Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
That was around, super exciting partners that I think, kind of from day zero really shared our belief in like building something cool in open source, and were incredibly supportive so far.
Yeah. So like, what's your take on the space then? You got to see like AI is like LLMs, AI is like a crazy space to be in. Like I imagine like it feels like you're on a conveyor belt, but it's going a little faster than like you're walking. So like even at the airport, like you get to walk at a faster pace, but this thing is like you're running through this airport. So like what's next? Because now you have these big incumbents like Microsoft, AWS doing large partnerships, OpenAI, Anthropic, and then potentially even maybe building what LangFuse is into their products. I think definitely Azure AI Studio has some of these features. They're not as exposed, I'll be honest. Like your doc's a little better. But what I'm getting at is like, so what's next? Like, how do you see the evolution of LangFuse in the space?
Yeah, so I think in a way, like we will keep doing what we've been doing, which is staying very, very close to our users and really just understanding how can we build the best product for them and really taking every piece of feedback they give to us and very, very seriously, and then also forge a relationship that's much closer than a large company would probably or could probably forge. And that way just hopefully try and develop the much better product over time. I think that's kind of been the strategy from the start. And we don't want to deviate from that. It gets harder over time, like honestly.
Yeah.
The more things you have going on, the more people are on the platform, the harder it is to really keep that personal bond with your customers. But I think that's really like, what we're still trying to do and I think delivering on for the people that work with us.
Yeah. And so you think you're going to be here in San Francisco permanently?
It's like an ongoing discussion. So we are building the company in Berlin. As I said, the 3 of us are German. We have 2 employees, so there's 5 of us in Berlin right now. I'm spending more and more time here and, sort of considering my options, but I think we will definitely stay in Berlin and let's see how much SF we add to it. Let's put it that way.
And what's your thoughts on Paris and like all these new, like we got Mixtrolls out there.
Yeah.
Poolside now is based out of there. So have you been there yet during
events? No, I think for me it's usually Berlin to SF rather than within Europe for now, because I spent quite a bit of time here now. But super exciting stuff happening out of Paris, and I think in general like that's just like a net positive for everyone in Europe. And we celebrate that. I think Paris is super exciting. London is, Zurich is, Berlin is. There's quite a lot of things happening. Unfortunately, still in like different cities that are like a little bit further away than Palo Alto and San Francisco are, but that's a bit of a disadvantage.
They feel closer because y'all have a great train system. So
trains and planes and fair enough. But I don't know. It's still different countries, different languages. The Bay Area is very concentrated, and we don't have that same network. But there's super exciting stuff happening in Europe too.
Yeah, is this your first like US based company you founded?
Yes, first company I founded, period. And also incorporated here.
And your co-founders as well? Have they done this?
Yes, also, we all met at university and basically, just worked 0 to 2 years after university and started this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it seems like there's definitely a product market fit, like hands down, when it comes to this technology and like what people are building. I think a year ago, like you look at the AI space and you're like, I don't know about this, and like I was very excited about it, but the consensus for a lot of folks were this could be hype, like it could be Web3 again, and I think Web3 is definitely still around, so folks don't come at me. But what I'm getting at is like it feels different than like what we saw with like the crypto up and down. And I would imagine like you're betting your future, your company on this.
Completely. Heavily betting on this, and like that's definitely a bet we are also very comfortable making. Because we see, I mean, you're saying it, and I think we can all see it, right? Like, I mean, how often do we all use ChatGPT now in our daily lives? How useful is it for our work, for drafting things, etc.? Like, just these are like the very, very surface layer things that everyone does, but it shows you that this is here to stay, right? Like, I think we were talking earlier about this kind of litmus test of if someone would take something away from you, would you be sad? And I think for generative AI, like a lot of people would be very, very sad if you were to take this technology away from them today. And I think that's always a good test to make. And then, I don't know, just open Twitter and see like all the amazing things people are putting out in any given day.
Oh yeah, I mean, literally yesterday, Figma had their keynote unveiling what their AI journey is, and came through diagram.com was acquisition. Like elegant experience. I'm not a Figma user. I'm a Figma user, but I'm not a super user. But I could see myself using Figma to like go generate some prototypes, like just like you do on V0 and Vercel, and get as far as possible. So like imagine y'all built all these iterations during YC. Imagine now having AI to generate these iterations of like, what if we did build a front end for our analytics tool and had charts and graphs look like this, and now you don't have to go take some time to go back and forth to like some contractor or designer. You're now a designer.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, I think sometimes it's just good to pause and like look back. Basically 1.5 years ago, no one was talking about this and no one was using this, and like how far we've come in literally 18 months is incredible to me. Because technology usually, it takes time to seep through and really be adopted, right?
Yeah.
And then the adoption. So funny story, I studied economic history in university for a very long time, and then the diffusion of technology and sort of how long things take to sift through to people was kind of what I studied. And usually it takes decades, can even take a century for like a technology to diffuse. And now like see what's happened in 18 months and how many people use this so regularly already. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And I applaud folks like LangFuse and all these other tools that are building right now for the stuff that we can build tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, it's like I was just talking to Stephen Tay about the Vercel SDK and the fact that I can go prototype like an idea and have it actually working. So like step away from the design, but now I have something that's implemented live. You can go point and click and I can get the validation. So like put it on GitHub, get my 100 stars, go talk to all those 100 people, and then I can validate what my next feature is.
Yeah, Vercel AI SDK also very, very easily integrated into LangFuse in our docs. So, then you've got it all covered.
Sounds like my weekend's covered.
Perfect.
Excellent. Well, Clem, thanks so much for coming over to Dogpatch and chilling with us.
Thank you, Brian.
And folks, stay saucy.